I had my boarding pass pressed flat against the gray plastic tray like it might wrinkle under pressure. Belt off. Shoes off. Laptop out. The same choreography everyone performs at airport security, half asleep and half annoyed. The line crept forward in short, irritated steps, people staring at the floor, or their phones like eye contact might cost extra time. I checked the clock mounted above the checkpoint. Too early to panic. Too late to relax. This wasn't a casual trip. I wasn't flying for a wedding or a weekend away. I was racing a clock that mattered. My grandfather's probate hearing was scheduled for that morning in Rio Arriba County, and whether I sat in that courtroom or not would decide more than paperwork. It would decide who controlled his estate, and who got written out quietly. My parents had been circling that hearing ever since the funeral. "We'll handle it," they kept saying. "You don't need the stress. Showing up will only complicate things." They didn't say stay away. They didn't have to. The tray slid forward. I stepped toward the metal detector just as someone moved into my path. Mom. Not TSA, not a supervisor, airport police, dark uniform, neutral expression, calm in a way that immediately made my stomach tighten. "Come with us. Please." For a brief, ridiculous second, I thought he'd made a mistake. I even glanced over my shoulder, half expecting someone else to be standing there. No one was. "What's going on?" I asked. "We need to ask you a few questions," he said. "Right now." The line behind me stalled. You can feel it when an airport goes quiet, not silent, just attentive. Curious. People pretending not to stare while memorizing details for later. "I have a flight," I said carefully. "You'll need to step aside." His partner joined him, positioning herself just close enough to block the path without touching me. "Trained. Polite. Non-negotiable. Just bring your ID," she added gently. I reached into my carry-on slowly, aware of how exposed you feel when your shoes and belt are already gone. I held my license between two fingers and handed it over. They guided me into a small room just off the checkpoint. Glass walls. A desk. One chair bolted to the floor. The kind of space designed to make you feel like you're already explaining yourself, even before you speak. The officer studied my ID, then my face. "Is your name Nina Holloway?" "Yes." He opened a tablet and scrolled, the screen lighting his expression from below. "I'm going to read what we received," he said. "Then you can respond." I nodded. I didn't rush to defend myself. I'd learned a long time ago that authority listens better when you don't fill the air with emotion. "We received a report this morning," he continued. "The caller stated you're traveling today and may pose a threat." The word threat landed wrong. Heavy. Dangerous. "A threat to who?" I asked. "To the public." That's when I knew this wasn't random. "Who made the report?" I asked. A pause. Short. Deliberate. "I'm not able to discuss that yet." His partner watched me closely, like she'd been warned I might cry or yell or unravel. I didn't give her that satisfaction. "I'm traveling to a probate hearing for my grandfather's estate," I said evenly. "If I miss it, other people benefit." The officer's eyes lifted from the tablet. "Probate? Less." He scrolled again. "The caller also claims you made statements about making people pay, and that you may have made concerning emergency calls in the past." My pulse slowed instead of speeding up. Emergency calls? That wasn't delay. That was reputation damage. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my hands visible on my knees. "Pull the emergency call log," I said calmly. "The actual call tied to this report, not a summary." His partner started to object. "Ma'am, that's not always. It will be there." I interrupted gently. "Because whoever made this report is counting on you not checking." The officer studied me longer this time. Then he tapped his screen and shifted position. "All right," he said. "Let's look." As he scrolled, I watched his face change, neutral, then focused, then cautious. His thumb stopped moving. He glanced at his partner, then back at me. "Ms. Holloway," he said slowly, "you mentioned your parents didn't want you at this hearing." "Wes." He swallowed once. "Because the call log identifies the reporting party," he lifted his eyes. "And it identifies your father as the caller." The room felt sharper, tighter, like everything had just clicked into place. But that wasn't the worst part. The officer looked back at the screen and added quietly, "There weren't just one or two calls. There were 3. And in that moment, I realized my father hadn't panicked when he called. He'd practiced. Officer Singh leaned closer to the tablet, her shoulder almost touching her partner's as she read the screen. Her jaw tightened, not dramatically, just enough to signal something was wrong. 3 calls, she said. "Same number." The officer nodded. 2 dropped before dispatch answered. 3rd one went through. My chest felt hollow. That wasn't concern, that was rehearsal. "Call. Hang up. Try again. Hang up. 3rd time. Say it clean. Say it convincing." The officer scrolled once more, then tapped a button marked play audio. His finger hovered there for half a second longer than necessary. Not hesitation, understanding. Once he pressed it, this wouldn't just be a misunderstanding. It would be a record. He pressed play. My father's voice filled the room, calm and measured, like he was ordering room service. "This is Grant Holloway." The recording began. "I'm calling because my daughter is flying today, and I'm worried she might do something irrational. She's been unstable lately. She's talked about making people pay." Officer Singh didn't blink. "I'm afraid for the public," my father continued. "She's emotional. She's heading to a probate hearing, and isn't thinking clearly." The officer paused the recording. The silence afterward felt heavier than the words themselves. "He used probate as context," Singh said flatly, "not as background." The officer nodded. "He framed it like motive." I kept my voice steady. "Because he wanted it documented, not resolved." They both looked at me. "He wasn't trying to protect anyone," I continued. "He was trying to slow me down." The officer exhaled through his nose and tapped the screen again. "There's more." He scrolled to a note appended to the call. "Reporting party stated subject may be carrying documents related to probate and could destroy them if confronted." That one hit differently. Not fear. Not concern. Evidence control. My fingers curled slightly on my knees, but my voice stayed calm. "I am carrying documents." Singh's eyes sharpened. "What kind?" "Emergency call logs from the night my grandfather died." The room shifted. Not dramatically, but the energy changed. Less procedural. More attentive. "That's why he escalated," I added. "He doesn't want those logs in front of a judge." The officer studied me for a moment, then nodded once like something had aligned in his head. "We're going to document this as retaliatory," he said. "Connected to a civil matter." He stood and stepped outside the room, speaking quietly to someone I couldn't see. I caught fragments through the glass. "False report. Family dispute. No criminal indicators." When he returned, he slid a small paper across the desk. "This is an incident number," he said. "Keep it. It confirms you were identified and cleared. No detention. No arrest." Relief washed through me, but I didn't let it show. Singh held up a finger. "One more thing." She turned the tablet slightly toward me. "The earlier dropped calls," she said. "They matter. Because they show intent." I replied. She nodded. "Exactly." The officer stood and opened the door. "We'll walk you back through security." That word, walk, was deliberate, visible, documented, witnessed. As we approached the checkpoint, my tray was still there, untouched. My belt looped where I'd left it. My boarding pass still flat, like nothing had happened. A TSS supervisor listened to the officer for less than 10 seconds before waving me through. Shoes on. Belt buckled. Hands steady. I checked the departures board. Gate change. Of course. I moved fast but didn't run. Airports punish panic. I weaved through rolling suitcases and duty-free displays, my heart doing its own sprint. Halfway to the gate, my phone buzzed. "Your itinerary has been updated." I didn't stop walking. Then it buzzed again. "Your flight has been cancelled." I stopped so suddenly someone bumped my shoulder. Cancelled. Not delayed. Not rescheduled. Cancelled per customer request. My throat tightened. I didn't open the airline app. Apps waste time. I went straight to the nearest service desk, placed my ID on the counter, and spoke evenly. "My flight was just cancelled," I said. "I did not request that." The agent frowned and typed. His expression shifted. "It was cancelled by someone who answered your security question," he said slowly. My pulse dropped into my hands. "I didn't authorize anyone," I said. He hesitated, then glanced back at the screen. The caller identified himself as Grant Holloway. There it was again. Different uniform, different system, same voice. I slid the incident slip across the counter. "Airport police stop," I said. "False report. This is interference with a court hearing." The agent's posture changed instantly. "I can rebook you," he said. "There's one seat left." Lucky wasn't the word. He printed a new boarding pass. Then another page. Internal notes. Caller Grant Holloway. Reason given: passenger not safe to travel alone. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it away. Because proof stacks faster when someone panics. I thought that was the end of it, until my phone buzzed again, and this time, it wasn't the airline. The notification came through just as I reached the gate. Notice of hearing update. I stared at it for half a second before opening it, already bracing myself. The probate hearing had been moved earlier. 2 hours earlier. Not delayed. Not rescheduled for convenience. Moved out of reach. I stood there while boarding announcements echoed overhead. My boarding pass warm in my hand. My stomach sinking with the slow certainty that this wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. Every step timed. Every system nudged just enough to make me miss the moment that mattered. I got on the plane anyway. I didn't relax when I sat down. I didn't put my bag away like this was normal travel. I buckled in, pulled my phone out, and dialed the probate clerk's office before the safety video even started. Rio Arriba County Probate, a woman answered, efficient and tired. My name is Nina Holloway, I said. I'm a beneficiary in today's hearing. I just received notice the time was changed. I'm currently in transit. Her keyboard clicked on the other end. Yes, the hearing time was adjusted this morning, she said. Be who? I asked. There was a pause. Not long but careful. The request came from counsel for Grant and Linda Holloway? Of course it did. And has the court ruled on anything yet? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. There is a pending motion, she said, to proceed without you. My chest tightened. On what basis? She exhaled quietly. The motion states you were detained at airport security for threat-related behavior. The lie landed cleanly. Too cleanly. That's false, I said, and I have documentation proving it. Her tone shifted, just slightly. Less procedural, more human. Are you represented, Ms. Holloway? Elliot Lane? I see him on today's docket, she said. He's in the building. Is there a way to get information to the judge before the hearing starts? I asked. Something supplemental. We don't accept filings by email, she said automatically. I'm not asking you to file it, I replied. I'm asking where I can send exhibits for the judge to review, because the motion contains a factual misrepresentation that's being used to exclude me. Silence. Typing. There is a secure clerk inbox for emergency exhibits, she said slowly. It won't be a formal filing, but it can be associated with today's hearing. That's all I need, I said. She read the address letter by letter. I repeated it back, then hung up as the plane began to taxi. I built the email immediately. No emotion, no commentary. Subject line. Estate of Harold Holloway, supplemental exhibits, attachments, airport police incident slip, airline cancellation record identifying the caller, a screenshot of my mother's text from the night before. If you show up, we'll handle it. In the body, I wrote 5 sentences. Short, factual, unarguable. I deny making any threats. Airport police identified the reporting party as my father. I was cleared to travel and not detained. My flight was canceled minutes before boarding by the same individual. The motion to proceed without me relies on false statements. I hit send just as the plane lifted off. Then I called Elliot Lane. I'm airborne, I said. They moved the hearing earlier and filed a motion saying I was detained. I saw it, he replied. No surprise in his voice. Just irritation. Stay reachable. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. The judge has reviewed your exhibits and is considering the motion at the start of the hearing. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then Lane called again. Your father just stood up, he said quietly. He told the judge you were removed from security in handcuffs. My fingers tightened around the phone. That's a lie, I said. I know, Lane replied. Wait, I could hear the courtroom through his phone now. Chairs shifting, a cough, the low hum of people settling into silence. Then the judge spoke. I have before me an airport incident number, he said. It indicates the individual was stopped, identified, and cleared. No arrest. No handcuffs. Silence followed. The kind that presses on your ears. I also have airline notes identifying the caller who canceled the ticket. The judge continued. The caller is listed as Grant Holloway. Another pause. Mr. Holloway, the judge said evenly. Choose your words carefully. Lane whispered into the phone. Hayes irritated. The judge denied the motion. Denied the request to proceed without me. Denied the emergency appointment my parents were asking for. And then, calmly, he continued the hearing to allow me to appear. When the call ended, I leaned back in my seat and stared at the tray table in front of me. They had tried to erase me with timing, with authority, with paperwork. Instead, the court slowed down and wrote their names into the record. I thought that would be the end of it, until the judge added one final instruction that made my parents' attorney freeze mid-sentence. The judge wasn't finished. Just when it felt like the damage had been contained, his voice came back through the phone, steady, deliberate, and carrying the kind of weight that makes people sit straighter. I am directing counsel to produce all communications related to the airport report and the airline cancellation, he said. This includes call records, emails, and internal notes. There was a pause, not dramatic, not emotional. The kind of pause that means everyone understands the room has shifted. Failure to comply, the judge continued, may result in sanctions. That word didn't echo, but it didn't need to. Sanctions don't threaten. They promise. I heard my mother make a small sound in the background, something between a gasp and a sob. The kind she used when she wanted to sound wounded without sounding guilty. Lane lowered his voice. That's big, he murmured. He's not letting this slide. The judge went on. Given the credible evidence of interference, I am continuing this hearing. Miss Holloway will be permitted to appear in person. If she arrives sooner, We will address scheduling at that time. Then, almost casually, he added, I will not reward obstruction. That was the sentence my parents hadn't expected. They'd counted on speed, on confusion, on the court wanting to move on. Instead, the court slowed everything down. The call ended. The plane cruised forward through empty sky, and for the first time that day, my hand stopped shaking. Not because I felt safe, because I felt seen. Lane texted me minutes later, land. Sleep. Tomorrow, walk in with your head up. I did exactly that. That night, I barely slept. Not from fear, but from adrenaline that refused to settle. The folder stayed on the nightstand beside me like a quiet witness. Proof doesn't glow, but you feel it when it's there. The next morning, I walked into Rio Arriba County Probate Court with Elliot Lane at my side. My parents were already seated. My father wore the same composed expression he used at funerals and charity events. My mother had tissues folded neatly in her hand, eyes red but dry. Prepared, the judge entered. Everyone stood. When we sat, he didn't look at my parents first. He looked at the file. Let the record reflect that Miss Nina Holloway is present, he said, and is a named beneficiary in this estate. Just like that, I existed again, on the record, where it mattered. He addressed my parents' attorney next. Before we proceed, the judge said, I want to be clear. No further emergency accommodations will be considered without notice to all parties. The attorney nodded quickly, too quickly. The judge turned the page in the file. I have reviewed the supplemental exhibits provided yesterday. My father shifted in his chair. The airport incident number confirms no arrest, no detention, and no threat behavior, the judge continued. The airline records identify the caller who canceled Miss Holloway's flight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He just read, and reading is powerful in a courtroom. My father tried to interrupt. Your Honor, the judge held up a hand. I'm not finished. Silence snapped back into place. The court does not appreciate being placed in the middle of manufactured emergencies, the judge said, particularly when those emergencies appear to have been created by a party seeking procedural advantage. My mother's lips pressed together. The judge turned his attention back to the file. We will proceed with the hearing as scheduled today, with all parties present. Lane leaned slightly toward me. This is where it turns, he whispered. The hearing moved forward. Slowly, carefully, no rushing, no shortcuts. Every document was reviewed, every claim examined. When my parents' attorney referenced my grandfather's mental state, Lane introduced the emergency call log, dates, times, notes from a dispatcher with no stake in family politics. The judge read it silently, then nodded once. We'll take this under advisement, he said. Hours later, when the session adjourned, the judge made one final statement for the record. This court expects good faith conduct from all parties moving forward. Expectation in that tone wasn't a request. As we walked out, Lane exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all morning. They overplayed it, he said. Systems don't like being used. I looked back once, not at my parents, but at the courtroom doors. They'd tried to shut me out. Instead, they'd invited scrutiny, and scrutiny doesn't forget. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night, because if I'd reacted emotionally instead of calmly, none of this would have worked.